On my wedding night, my husband refused to touch me and said he was tired. By midnight, I heard moans coming from my mother-in-law's room. What I discovered sent shivers down my spine. If anyone had told me that my wedding night, the night I had dreamed of since I was a little girl, would leave me questioning everything I thought I knew about love and commitment, I would have laughed in disbelief. Andrew was the absolute love of my life, or so I thought. I had kept myself for him and saved every last bit of intimacy for this night, believing it would make everything feel more sacred, more ours. I had imagined him holding me close, touching me gently, tracing my skin like he had waited his whole life for me. I imagined a night where love felt warm and safe, not rushed or uncertain. A night where his hands would explore me with tenderness, with the warmth of his touch sending shivers down my spine, and finally letting our bodies speak the way our hearts already had. But the night didn't unfold the way I imagined. My name is Rachel. This is the story of how the man I thought was my eternal, my infinity, betrayed me on my wedding night with the person I least expected. Before I continue, I want to let you know that if your love had been taken for granted, or if you were betrayed or blindsided by someone you trusted with your whole heart, this story is for you. I know that kind of pain. I know how quiet it gets when your heart shatters and the world keeps moving like you don't matter. I understand the midnight cries when your pillow is soaked with tears. You're not watching this by accident. You're not alone. Just like you, I have been there, and I came out strong. Before I begin, I want you to hear this from me. I see you. I understand your pain. I love you, and I am rooting for you. Please relax, sit back, and listen till the end. Because this story is told with love to illuminate your hearts. Please, before we begin, help us grow by hitting that subscribe button, liking this video, and commenting on where you're watching from. Now, let's begin. The wedding itself was in Savannah, Georgia, at a small historic venue surrounded by the kind of charm you only see in old movies. Brick walls kissed by ivy, oak trees leaning toward the river as if they were bowing in blessing, and string lights draped like delicate stars. We had rented the entire estate for the weekend so that our parents and the wedding guests could stay the night before and after the wedding. We wanted it to be more than just an event. We wanted it to be a moment of togetherness, shared laughter, and joyful anticipation. I wanted a day that felt like us, a day that would feel engraved in memory, a day that would start the rest of my life perfectly. And for months, I truly believed that's what I was getting. The night before, I could barely sleep. My stomach twisted with anticipation. I ran through the schedule over and over, smoothed the folds of my dress, and checked my hair, my makeup, and my shoes. My excitement was so full, so complete, it made my head spin. I was that kind of bride who counted down the hours with a mixture of nerves and pure joy, the kind who imagined every glance, every touch, every whispered word. Standing by my side through every last detail was Sandra Robinson, my best friend, my confidant, and my sister in every sense of the word. Saying best friend felt too small. We had grown up side by side from the moment I moved into the neighborhood as a 5-year-old. We'd shared birthdays, sleepovers, heartbreaks, school triumphs, failed crushes, and college applications. She had been part of my entire life, almost like she was stitched into my childhood and adulthood both. Choosing her as my maid of honor was a decision no one dared to question because they all know how deep our connection is. On the morning of the wedding, She smiled with a genuine-looking tenderness as she helped me fix my hair and wear my wedding dress just to make sure everything was perfect. She hugged me so tightly I thought my ribs would crack and whispered, "You deserve this happiness. I've never seen you this happy." And she was right. I was completely happy and in love. But what I didn't know was that behind her sweet smiles, a dark secret was hiding, a secret that would destroy my life from the inside out. My family was buzzing with joy. My mom cried every 10 minutes. My dad rehearsed his speech and had to step outside because he got too emotional. My cousins were loud and chaotic in the best way. Everything around me felt like home. And Andrew, he seemed genuinely happy. He sent me long messages the night before, telling me he couldn't wait to start our lives together. He joked about how he might cry at the altar and embarrass himself. He even reminded me to breathe because he knew I get nervous easily. So when I woke up on the morning of my wedding day, I had no reason, absolutely no reason to think anything was wrong. I was surrounded by love, minutes away from marrying the man I had imagined sharing everything with, from whispered dreams to the softest, most private touches of our wedding night. When it was time, my father took my arm, and we walked toward the garden where everyone waited. The soft hum of string instruments floated in the air. White petals lined the path. Lanterns swayed gently above us. I held my bouquet so tightly that my fingers tingled, but I couldn't stop smiling, not when my father whispered, "You look like an angel," not when the guests gasped softly, not when the world felt golden. Andrew was standing at the end of the aisle, perfectly dressed in his royal blue suit, perfectly groomed, hands clasped, standing tall. He is the man I loved, the man I believed I would grow old with. His eyes glistened. His smile radiates the whole room. The kind of smile that made me feel seen, loved, and cherished. My heart almost burst. I walked toward him, holding back tears, every step feeling like a promise I was finally stepping into. When I reached him, he took my hand, and his touch felt warm, steady, and reassuring. "You look beautiful," he whispered, his voice cracking. And I believed it. I believed every word, every smile. When the vows came and the officiant asked if I would take Andrew as my lawfully wedded husband, I didn't hesitate. My voice shook with honesty, with every ounce of hope and love I had stored for this moment. As I said, "I do," to the man I thought was the absolute love of my life. When the officiant turned to Andrew and asked, "Do you take Rachel as your lawfully wedded wife?" he smiled widely and said, "I do," without hesitation. His voice was steady, but there was something a little distant in his eyes. I noticed it briefly, but I brushed it off. I told myself it was the stress of the day, the pressure, the cameras, and the crowd. It was our wedding. People got nervous, right? I wasn't going to let a flicker of distance ruin the moment I had waited years for. Then the officiant told him, "You may kiss the bride." Andrew lifted his hands to my veil, and for a second, the world felt painfully still. I had imagined this moment so many times, during fittings, during planning, even as a little girl. When he finally raised the veil, our eyes met. His face came into full view, and suddenly everything felt real. I leaned in, and when he kissed me deeply, the room erupted in applause. It wasn't a soft, polite kind of kiss. It was full, present, the kind of kiss that made my knees shake a little. For a moment, it anchored me. It made me feel chosen, safe, and loved. I held on to that feeling so tightly. I didn't know then that someone could kiss you like that while their heart could be somewhere else. The reception felt like a dream come true. Everything was set exactly the way I had hoped. The lights, the music, the flowers, the laughter. People kept hugging me, congratulating me, and telling me how I made a very beautiful bride. It felt like a dream come true. My dad stood up to give his toast. The room became quiet, and he looked at me with that soft pride only a father can wear. He talked about watching me grow, watching our relationship grow, and how he had seen love shape me into a better, braver woman. His voice shook a little, and that alone almost broke me. The applause afterward was loud and warm. Andrew raised his glass too. He smiled, but it was the kind of smile that barely touched his eyes. It felt forced, like he was performing. I didn't understand it, but again, I shoved the thought away. Weddings come with emotions. Who knew what was going on in his head? Everyone else was genuinely happy. The dance floor filled so quickly the DJ barely finished announcing the first song. People were laughing, shouting, and spinning. And in the middle of it all, Sandra stayed close to me, making sure my dress didn't drag, touching up my makeup, and checking on me every few minutes. If anyone had asked me then who I trusted most in that room, I would have said Sandra without thinking. We danced, we celebrated, and we smiled for pictures. And yet, beneath all the noise and joy, I kept feeling this small tug in my chest, a quiet discomfort I couldn't explain. I ignored it. I had to. It was my wedding day. And then, as the room rose to applaud my father's toast again, Andrew lifted his glass once more with that same tight, forced, and empty smile. I looked at him, searching for the familiar spark he usually had, but all I saw was a strange silence in his gaze. Something unreadable. I told myself I was overthinking it, that I was being too sensitive, and that a bride's emotions could play tricks on her. But deep down, without even understanding why, something inside me had started to crack. After the party, we went up to the bridal suite together. The suite was a masterpiece of luxury, a cocoon of muted silks and deep, respectful silence. A dozen arrangements of fresh white flowers perfumed the air with a scent that was both intoxicating and delicate. Champagne rested on ice, waiting to toast a love I believed would last forever. My heart was pounding, a frantic drum against my ribs, a rhythm of anticipation, excitement, and a nervous terror I could barely contain. I closed the door softly, savoring the moment, convinced that we were about to seal our story with intimacy and love. My chest tightened with a physical manifestation of every promise I had made to myself, every whispered plan, and every fantasy I had allowed myself to imagine. I was ready to surrender, to be seen completely, to be loved fully. I studied Andrew's profile as he moved into the room, calm, composed, distant. My fingers reached out almost instinctively, tracing the sharp line of his jaw, searching for the warmth I had expected. He offered a small, polite smile that felt detached, more suited for a business meeting than a wedding night. "I'm going to freshen up," I said, trying to sound light and normal. He nodded without really looking at me. I went into the bathroom and closed the door behind me. The silence wrapped around me instantly. I turned on the tub and let the water run, steam rising slowly as I stepped out of my gown. The weight of the day seemed to fall away with it, the smiles, the photos, and the expectations. I wanted to wash everything off and come back to him clean, soft, and ready. The water was warm against my skin. I stood there longer than necessary, letting it soothe me, letting myself breathe. I imagined what would come next. Him pulling me close, laughing softly, telling me how beautiful I looked and how happy he was. I held on to that image because I needed it to be real. When I finished, I dried off slowly and slipped into the red lace negligee I had chosen carefully for this night. It was a delicate and designed to hint at desire and openness, a visual language of love and readiness. Looking at myself in the mirror, I saw a woman prepared to be vulnerable, to be loved, and to be cherished. I felt a surge of longing and nervous excitement tighten my stomach. I was ready to be held, to be close, to feel the culmination of everything we had promised each other. I took one last breath and walked back into the room, the lace brushing lightly against my skin. The room that had once felt warm and welcoming now seemed like a stage, and I was waiting for the cue, the moment when Andrew would look at me and see me. He was sitting on the edge of the armchair, loosening his bow tie. His movements were deliberate, methodical, and completely self-contained. The air, which moments ago had seemed electric with promise, now felt deflated. I took a step closer, hoping my presence would reach him, but his eyes barely lifted. Andrew! My voice was soft, trembling with expectation. He looked at me briefly, but his eyes did not see me. There was no softness, no warmth, no recognition of the woman standing before him, dressed in the silent invitation I had prepared. His expression was distant, serious, and devoid of desire. "I'm tired," he said flatly, as though stating a fact, not offering an excuse. Tired. My chest contracted. This was supposed to be the night we celebrated our love in private. And he was tired? His calm and unreadable face made my chest ache with confusion and disbelief. I reached out again, my fingers brushing his arm, hoping to spark some recognition, some flicker of the connection we had shared all day. He stiffened slightly, then moved away, methodically unbuttoning his shirt without a word. He didn't acknowledge me. He didn't approach the bed. Instead, he walked past the large bed in the center of the room and headed straight for the small twin bed tucked awkwardly into a corner. He climbed the bed and switched off the lamp without looking back. No good night. No whispered reassurance. Just a silence so complete it pressed against my chest like a weight I couldn't move. I stood in the middle of the room, stunned, unsure what to do with myself. My body aching for the intimacy and closeness I had imagined. I felt abandoned. My hands trembled. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to cry, to scream, to do something, anything to reclaim the warmth I had expected, but I felt paralyzed. I wrapped my arms around myself, feeling the silk of my negligee and the emptiness it failed to fill. Tears slid down my cheeks silently. I waited, hoping for some gesture, a word, anything to break the unbearable cold. But there was nothing, only the faint sound of his breathing from across the room. I slowly sank onto the central bed, trying not to make a sound, trying to preserve whatever dignity remained. The scent of fresh flowers clung to the air, but inside my chest, everything was dying. I felt utterly alone, rejected, abandoned. Hours passed. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, willing it all to be a nightmare. wishing he would reach over, pull me close, and whisper that it was all a misunderstanding. The room's silence was suffocating. Every tick of the clock a reminder of the growing distance between us. My body and mind ached for the simple comfort of touch, of warmth, and of recognition. Yet all I could hear was his breathing, steady and indifferent. At some point, exhaustion went out, and I closed my eyes. But I couldn't have been asleep for more than 35 minutes when a muffled sound woke me up with a jolt. At first, I thought I was dreaming. I sat up slowly, my heart racing, confused, trying to figure out where it was coming from. I looked towards the twin bed, where Andrew had laid, but it was empty. The blanket was pushed back like he had left in a hurry. A sharp panic hit my stomach. There was no note, no message, no explanation, just an empty space where my husband should have been on our wedding night. I slipped out of bed, my legs unsteady, and walked toward the door. The hallway outside was dim, only lit by the faint light coming from a room at the end. I was about to turn back when I heard it again. It was a short, strangled sound, a groan, muffled, quickly cut off like a sound of immense pleasure being swallowed by shame. It was human, intense, and utterly intimate. My heart didn't just pound. It clawed at my ribs, desperate to escape. I stood frozen, leaning against my doorframe, trying to argue with my own ears. It's a bad dream. It's the TV next door. It's anything but what it sounds like. But the lie was thin and collapsing. My gut already knew. I was about to walk toward the sound that would burn my life. My heart hammered painfully as I stepped into the hallway. My nightgown brushed against my legs as I moved, and every step felt like I was walking towards something I already dreaded but couldn't name. And that's when I remembered that the room belonged to my mother-in-law, Andrew's mother. She had said at the end of the dinner that she would go into town and buy some groceries. She hadn't been back since. My worries increased. In fact, I stopped breathing. Why was light coming from my mother-in-law's room when everyone knew that she was not around? Where is Andrew? Why did every instinct in my body suddenly feel like it was bracing for impact? My soul was screaming, "Stop, go back." But my body was already walking toward the place where it would be irrevocably shattered. I told myself I was paranoid. I told myself I was tired. I told myself anything to keep my mind from going to the one place it wanted to go. But the fear was bigger than my excuses. I walked toward the door, each step heavier than the last. As I got closer, I heard voices filled with pleasure and intimacy, low, urgent whispers. I froze halfway, my hand on the wall, my breath trapped in my throat. My brain kept trying to protect me. It's not him. It can't be him. It's someone else. Anyone else. But deep down, I already knew I was about to find out a secret that will shock me to my bone marrow. There was a shift inside me, a horrible, slow-breaking realization. All the tiny red flags I ignored before the wedding, the cold distance in his eyes, the way he was reluctant in saying his vows, they all came crashing together at once. I reached the door. My fingers were shaking so badly I had to curl them into a fist to steady myself. I didn't push it open. I just leaned closer, close enough to hear the voices coming from the room. The groans were lower now, softer, more desperate, as if someone inside was holding their breath, knowing they might be overheard. Then I heard the faint, rhythmic creak of the bed, a soft sigh, and then a woman's voice, a low, broken whisper of pleasure. My eyes snapped shut, squeezing out the tears I was too stunned to shed. No, please God, no. But I recognized it instantly. I knew that voice like I knew my own reflection, my own heartbeat. It was Sandra, my best friend, my maid of honor, my sister in everything but blood. The girl who knew every embarrassing story, every childhood secret, and every dream I had about Andrew. The same girl who hugged me before the ceremony and told me that I deserved this happiness. Her voice, laced with raw, undeniable pleasure, was coming from my mother-in-law's room. Everything we had shared, all our secrets, the long teenage talks, and the promises of friendship and loyalty, all came crashing down with that sound. And the worst was yet to come. And then I heard another voice, a male's hungry moans. It was Andrew. His voice was deep and guttural sound of unleashed passion he had never once offered to me. It was raw, unmistakable, and followed by a thick, heavy exhale that whispered a single name. Sandra, followed by two sentences. You drive me crazy. I enjoy making love to you. That single name and two sentences spoken with that much hunger were the sound of the axe splitting my life in two. He refused me for her. He chose tonight, our wedding night, to lie to me just so he could be with her. My marriage was not even up to 24 hours, but here I am listening to my husband make love hungrily to my own best friend. The cruelty wasn't just the sex. It was the deliberate timing. They had mocked my vows, my dress, my hope, and my body. I didn't move. I couldn't move. It was still unbelievable. I stayed pressed against the door, needing the sound to be absolutely, fatally clear. I needed to know, beyond any shadow of doubt, that the two people I had trusted with my entire life were collaborators in this ultimate cruel treason. I was listening to the murder of my own marriage. My throat tightened. My knees nearly buckled. My vision blurred. My body went cold, then hot, then numb. The world tipped sideways, and I had to brace myself against the wall to stay standing. This can't be happening, I whispered, but my voice barely came out. I felt myself sinking to the floor, my back against the wall, my hands covering my mouth as I tried not to make a sound. My chest felt crushed, like someone was pressing me down with both hands. I couldn't cry. The shock was too big, too heavy. I just sat there, breathing in painful, shaky gasps, waiting for the door to open. Every word, every groan was a dagger straight to my soul. And still, I didn't move. I decided to stay there, waiting patiently in front of the door without making a sound, waiting for them to come out so I could face them. I want to see their faces. I want to know why they chose to betray me on my wedding night. I want to know why Sandra, my best friend who I had sacrificed so much for, would choose to sleep with my husband when there are millions of men outside who would be willing to have her. I want to know why Andrew, the man I had loved faithfully, chose to betray me on our wedding night and painfully with my best friend. I stayed there on the cold carpet, shaking, staring at that thin line of light under the door, knowing that whatever came next would change everything forever. I needed to confirm with my own eyes what I had already heard. I don't know how long I sat there on the floor, leaning against the doorframe like a broken hinge. Maybe minutes, maybe an hour. Time didn't move the way it used to. Every second seems like eternity. Every breath was too loud. Every heartbeat felt like it was punching through my ribs. I closed my eyes, opened them, and I was still there. I didn't leave. The door opened suddenly, and Andrew came out. The look on his face when he saw me, God, I will never forget it. His eyes widened instantly, shock hitting him so fast that his mouth dropped open. He froze mid-step, like someone had poured cold water over his entire body. His shirt was unbuttoned all the way down, not one button done. His trousers were unzipped, hanging loose around his hips, and his belt was draped over his shoulder. His hair was a mess, flattened on one side, standing up on the other, like someone's hands had been in it, pulling, tugging, touching him, where I thought only a wife should. He didn't say anything. He just turned around as if looking for an explanation for his own betrayal. Then Sandra stepped out behind him. She wasn't wearing the dress she had worn to my wedding, that elegant, rose-colored gown that made everyone call her the most beautiful maid of honor they had ever seen. No. Now, she was wearing something different, a short, tight, black, and unmistakably seductive dress. It clung to her body like it belonged to another night, another purpose. Nothing about it said she had been doing anything other than exactly what I had heard her doing with Andrew inside my mother-in-law's room. Her makeup was smeared. Her mascara runs down her cheeks. Her lipstick was gone except for the faint stain around her mouth. Her hair was tangled and wild, sticking to her neck, her forehead, and the straps of that tiny dress. She stopped in the doorway the second she saw me. She froze, rooted to the spot, as if she had seen a ghost, unable to pretend, to run, or to hold my gaze. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Our eyes met. Her refusal to hold my gaze was the final, devastating piece of evidence. The way her eyes darted away, fixed instead on the brass handle of the door, spoke volumes. It was not the look of a friend or even a stranger. It was the look of a venomous snake caught in the act. I pushed myself up from the floor. My legs were shaking so violently that I thought I would collapse, but a new, cold strength held me rigid. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. There were no more tears. The source of my grief had run dry, leaving only a mute, dry rage that consumed me from the inside out. My voice felt trapped, thick, and lifeless, yet I dared to know the reason they chose to hurt and betray me. Why? Why me? I asked. My voice came out hoarse but steady. I simply stated the question, daring them to explain the monumental cruelty they had inflicted on me. Andrew stammered, his guilt-etched face working frantically as though the question hurt him physically. Babe, listen, I think you're misunderstanding what you saw. He rubbed the back of his neck, forcing a shaky laugh that didn't sound like a laugh at all. I was just showing Sandra something in my mom's room. She thought she lost her bracelet earlier. We were looking for it. That's all. The lie was so thin, so insultingly stupid that it shredded between his words. You were showing her something? I whispered. At 2 a.m. in the morning? Half naked? In your mother's room? He looked away quickly. I wasn't half naked. She tripped over something, and your trousers unzipped themselves. I asked quietly. His face flashed red, then white. I didn't say anything else to him. My silence was absolute. I wasn't a fool, and I was certainly not a child to be placated with such ridiculous nonsense. I just looked at him, my expression utterly devoid of emotion, allowing the weight of his undeniable failure to crush him. Sandra still hadn't spoken. She stood against the doorframe, trembling, holding her hands together so tightly her knuckles were white. She looked small, weak, cowardly. Her silence was a louder confession than any sound I had heard through the door. Andrew faltered, his eyes dropping from mine to the floor. The lie had failed. He sighed, a heavy, burdened sound, and the composure he was trying to manufacture crumbled. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken years of deceit. But there was no more room for his drama. I told him I had heard everything, every whisper, every moan, every word that he should have said to me. I told him he didn't need to say anything else, that his silence had already said it all. Then Andrew dropped his shoulders, closed his eyes, and finally admitted it in a low voice, as if he no longer had the strength to keep up the charade. His confession finally came, delivered not with remorse, but with a strange, detached confusion, as if he were explaining a complex, frustrating business decision he couldn't quite rationalize. Rachel, since you already found out, I think it's best I tell you what happened. Sandra and I had been seeing each other for 2 years. My stomach turned. My hands went cold. 2 years? We had dated for 5 years. That meant before the proposal, before the engagement, before everything. He continued, voice quiet, almost confused. She came on to me. I didn't plan it. I tried to refuse at first, but she kept pushing. She made it hard to walk away. She seduced me, Sandra. She was always there, always provocative. I fought against it. I swear, but I don't know what came over me. The more I fought, the more I fell for her provocative body. His words were clinical and cold, focused on the provocative body of my best friend, the body he had just chosen over mine. The utter lack of emotional accountability was breathtaking. He spoke as if she were the disease, and he the unwilling victim, completely bypassing the fact that he had stood at the altar and promised me his life, that he is an adult who can walk away from unfavorable situations. Then Sandra finally broke. She pushed past Andrew, tears suddenly streaming down her smeared face. I'm sorry. I couldn't stop myself. I fell for him. I fell so hard. I loved him. And I believe he loved me too. I didn't plan to. I know it's wrong. I know I shouldn't have, but I can't help it. Her apologies spilled out, fast and frantic, too late to matter, too shallow to hold any true weight. The sight of her, my supposed best friend, weeping for the man she had just slept with on my wedding night, was the final stroke of cruelty. I couldn't listen to her trying to twist this into some tragic love confession. Not after everything she had taken from me. This was the girl I grew up with, The girl I told every secret to. The girl I let into every part of my life. 4 or 5 good years, I had poured my heart out to her, told her about Andrew, about our future, and about my fears and my hopes. And all that time, she had been sleeping with him, smiling in my face, listening to my foolish dreams, using my own vulnerable confessions as currency in her secret affair, and even wearing a bridesmaid dress at my wedding. The woman who had shared my childhood secrets, who I had trusted more than anyone in the world, was a snake. She had not only stabbed me in the back, she had waited until I was dressed in my wedding gown to twist the knife. She was no longer a friend. She wasn't even a stranger. She was a threat, a toxic malignancy on my history, and a co-conspirator in my destruction. I looked at them, both, the adulterous husband and the treacherous friend. My legs were shaking beneath me. My chest was burning with a silent, consuming fire, and breathing felt impossible. The air, like everything else, felt like it was betraying me. But the tears did not come. The devastation was too absolute for water. All the sorrow had curdled into a dry, frightening clarity. I was no longer the naive bride who had walked into that suite full of impossible expectations. The wedding had turned into a nightmare, and I was now cold, hard, and utterly new. I didn't utter another word. No accusations, no pleas, no screams. They weren't worth the energy. They weren't worth the sound. I simply turned my back on the pathetic tableau of their guilt and walked back to the bridal suite. I walked past the king bed, past the abandoned champagne, past the white lilies that now stank of deceit. I opened the wardrobe, pulled my smallest suitcase, and began to pack. My movements were precise, methodical, and disconnected. I gathered my things without looking at anything that would remind me of the lie. When I was done, I zipped the suitcase, picked up my cell phone and my key card, and left the suite without looking back. I didn't see Andrew or Sandra in the hallway. They had scurried back into the borrowed room, perhaps too ashamed to watch me go, or perhaps already discussing their next move. I walked down the grand marble staircase, my body held rigid by that cold, protective rage. My dress, the dress meant for my happy ending, was still on. My face was burning with the humiliation, but my soul felt strangely light, relieved of the crushing weight of a dishonest love. I was leaving the hotel, not as Andrew's wife, but as a woman completely stripped bare of hope, of trust, of a future. Every step felt like dragging pieces of myself across broken glass, but I kept moving because staying would have killed something inside me that I couldn't afford to lose. I walked out the front doors and into the unforgiving light of the city dawn, my soul in pieces, but my feet finally utterly free. I don't remember how long I walked after leaving that suite. All I know is that my feet carried me far from the estate, far from the bed where my marriage died before it even had time to breathe. I didn't have my wedding gown on, just the red lace negligee I had slipped into, foolishly imagining a night of intimacy, of promises, of belonging. The thin fabric clung to my skin, soaked with cold night air and heartbreak. The road was empty and quiet. I kept walking without thinking, without direction, my legs shaking beneath me, gravel bit into my bare feet. I replayed everything, the groans, the whispers, Sandra's voice begging my husband to have her more. Andrew's voice telling my best friend how she drives him crazy in bed. The betrayal I had heard through that door was something that should never have happened, especially between the both of them. Every time I blinked, I saw Sandra in that short dress she changed into, her smeared makeup, and her guilt. Every time I inhaled, I smelled Andrew's cologne mixed with shame. I kept asking myself the same question. Where did I go wrong? When did everything turn so wrong? When did my best friend, the girl who shared my childhood secrets and birthday cakes, begin sharing my man behind my back? When did Andrew stop being my safe place and become a stranger crawling into someone else's arms? Nothing made sense. Nothing even felt real. The world looked the same, but mine had collapsed. I had loved Andrew honestly, deeply, completely. For 5 good years, I stood by him. I chose him again and again, even when it wasn't easy. I sacrificed so much for this relationship. My time, my resources, my comfort, just name it. I bent when things were hard. I adjusted my dreams, softened my expectations, and told myself that love meant endurance. I defended him when others doubted. I believed in him when he doubted himself. I stayed when walking away would have hurt less. I gave him my loyalty, my patience, my youth, and my trust. I gave him the parts of me I can never get back. And yet, here was I, betrayed by the man I trusted with my heart and my own best friend, who I would have sworn would have my back. That realization hurt more than anything else. I was standing in the wreckage of the betrayal, wondering how devotion could turn into something so humiliating. How being faithful could end in feeling disposable. How loving someone with my whole heart could leave me feeling so empty, so foolish, so utterly alone. I searched my memory for my sins. I replayed every moment, every argument, and every compromise I made. I wondered if I had loved too much, trusted too easily, and believed too deeply. Was I the worst sinner here? Was loving him the crime? Was standing by Andrew and Sandra and been true to them my fatal mistake? Or was I simply the only one who never learned how to betray? Nothing made sense. The world still looked the same, but mine had collapsed. I wasn't just grieving my marriage. I was grieving the woman I was when I still believed love would protect me. I eventually ended up by the beach, a mile away from the estate. The waves were loud, violent even, as if they were furious on my behalf. I sat on a rock, my arms around my knees, shivering. My hair was messy. My makeup was a smudge under my eyes, and the negligee, something meant for love, now felt like a costume for humiliation. No one passed me, and for once I was grateful. If someone had asked me what happened, I don't think a single word would have left my mouth. I was empty, completely and painfully empty. By the time the sky turned gray with dawn, my mind was numb, not healed, not calm, just stripped of every emotion I had left. I walked back to the estate. I didn't know what I was going to do, but something inside me needed to find closure. I couldn't leave without telling the truth. The place looked peaceful, almost beautiful, the way it had looked when we arrived the day before with our families, laughing, teasing, imagining a weekend of celebration and togetherness. The entire estate we rented so our families could stay before and after the wedding to share happiness, warmth, joy, and unity now looks like a place of destruction in my eyes. Inside, the dining hall buzzed with cheerful chatter. My parents, Andrew's parents, my cousins, people who had stood by me yesterday, blissfully unaware that the foundation of the marriage they were celebrating had already collapsed. They had all slept peacefully. They had no idea their daughter, their niece, their new in-law had spent her wedding night stumbling alone through the dark like a woman running from a crime scene. Andrew and Sandra were not there. Their seats at the main table were conspicuously empty, a void that spoke louder than any confession. The silence of their shame was palpable, focusing every horrified gaze onto me. I stood in the doorway. The moment they saw my disheveled figure, the silk robe dragging in the dirt, the dark smudges beneath my eyes, my tangled hair, the room went utterly, violently still. The laughter evaporated. The clinking stopped, not because they knew anything, but because of how I looked. My mother stood first, her eyes widening. My father pushed back his chair slowly. Andrew's mother froze with her teacup halfway to her lips. Even his father's confident posture tightened, like he already sensed something was wrong. No one questioned my appearance. They just stared, waiting for me to speak. I walked slowly into the center of the room. My legs trembled, but the cold rage holding my heart kept my voice steady, dangerously clear. Good morning, everyone. I need everyone's attention, please, I said. My voice didn't shake, even though my insides were trembling violently. The entire table fell silent, the kind of silence that feels like a held breath. I stood there, hands clasped in front of me, like I was trying to hold myself together. Without shaking, I spoke. I thanked them for being with me on what should have been the happiest day of my life. And then, without hesitation, I told them the truth. I'm ending the marriage, I said. A chair scraped sharply across the floor. My mother covered her mouth. My father's eyes filled with something that hurt to look at. Andrew's parents exchanged a panicked look, but neither spoke. No one should congratulate us, I continued. There's nothing to celebrate. Someone tried to say my name, but I lifted a hand, stopping them gently. I'm not doing this out of confusion. I'm not acting out of emotion. I am speaking with full awareness of what happened last night. My throat tightened once, but I forced myself to keep going. I caught Andrew and Sandra together in his mother's room on my wedding night. The words dropped like a stone in the center of the room. A collective gasp broke the silence. Sharp, painful, almost physical. My mother's legs nearly gave out. Andrew's mother went pale instantly, clutching the edge of the table. His father's eyes closed, shame settling over him like a shadow. My cousins exchanged shocked glances, unsure whether to look at me or hide their faces. I continued, my voice steady. I didn't hear rumors. I didn't misunderstand. I heard them. I saw them. And I will not pretend it didn't happen. This was not a one-time mistake, but an affair they have been conducting for 2 years in my 5-year relationship with Andrew. Andrew's father, a man known for his towering pride, sagged into his chair, covering his face with his hands in utter shame. My mother finally broke, her sobs muffled against my father's shoulder. I will be annulling the marriage. I want nothing to do with either of them. Please don't ask me to reconsider. Please don't tell me it was a mistake or a moment of weakness. I saw enough. I heard enough. And I deserve better than this. My father stood up and wrapped me in a silent, firm hug, as if telling me he was proud of me. No one argued about my decision. Not one person tried to soften the truth. Not one person attempted to defend Andrew or Sandra, because deep down, they all knew I am not the kind of woman who invents something like this. The silence that followed was heavy, but this time, it wasn't painful. It was respect and grief and the slow, quiet cracking of expectations that would never be repaired. I took a step back and prepared to leave the hall. My parents hugged me, the kind of reassuring hug you give to your child just to let them know that you understand their pains. The hug that shows that your heart breaks because you know your child's pain is yours. Andrew's parents couldn't even lift their eyes from the table. Their shame filled the room more loudly than any apology could have. I didn't say anything else. There was nothing left to say. Disappointment hung in the air, like a bitter perfume that everyone was breathing in. And in the middle of all that, I left without looking back. Leaving felt less like walking away from a wedding and more like stepping out of the wreckage of a life I had built with my own hands. Every step toward the exit tasted like disappointment, thick, bitter, and impossible to swallow. I wasn't just leaving Andrew. I was leaving the version of myself who had believed in him, trusted him, defended him, and planned forever with him. I didn't pack anything sentimental. No gifts, no wedding decorations, no reminders, not even my wedding dress. The only thing I took was my dignity, scraped together and bleeding, but still mine. I slipped into a fresh set of clothes I had brought for the next morning. A simple dress and a coat, something that made me feel less exposed and less like a woman whose life had just exploded. Then I walked out of the estate gate with my head held high. My phone kept vibrating, calls, messages, questions, but I ignored all of it. None of them mattered anymore. That life was dead to me. Those people were dead to me. And as I walked toward the road, something inside me settled. I was done being the fool in someone else's story. Back home, I didn't hesitate. I filed for divorce with a level of clarity I didn't know I was capable of. I didn't want days of reflection, family advice, or second chances. No waiting for him to explain or apologize. I had already heard everything I needed to hear behind that door. All I wanted was to close that chapter with the same firmness with which I had lived it. The news spread quietly but fast. People whispered. Friends did double takes. But my mind was made up. The betrayal cut so deep that I stopped believing any man could truly love a woman. I knew it wasn't fair. My father had loved my mother faithfully for more than 30 years, never once giving her a reason to doubt him. Never for once had there been any side chick or secret lover drama. But pain doesn't care about logic. When you're hurt badly enough, every judgment you make comes straight from the wound, not from the truth. Andrew had shattered me. He was the place where everything I believed about loyalty collapsed. And in those first months after everything fell apart, it didn't matter that good men existed somewhere. Mine wasn't one of them. My marriage wasn't one of those miracles. So it was easier to say all men are the same than to admit that one man had destroyed a part of me I was still trying to recover. At that point, I didn't want anyone new. The idea of dating made my stomach twist. I had spent months patching myself together, building walls I didn't think anyone would ever be allowed to climb again. I was tired of trusting, tired of hoping, and tired of believing. Love felt like something meant for other people, but not for me. Then, as if the betrayal wasn't enough, Andrew and Sandra went public with their relationship. Not quietly, but boldly, shamelessly. And within 2 months, she moved in with him. The rumors spread faster than wildfire. Sandra walked around as if she had won a trophy, shoulders high, chin high, acting like she had proved something. She behaved as if he chose to cheat on me with her because she was a better woman than me, as if stealing a man who couldn't stay loyal for a single night was some kind of achievement. She truly believed she was the upgrade. She believed he would be different with her, better with her. After all, wasn't she the woman he chose over me? But the sweetness didn't last long. It was not even up to 6 months of cohabitating before Andrew started showing her his true color. By the time I heard about it, their relationship had already rotted from the inside. The same secrecy and sneaking around that brought them together became the weapon tearing them apart. Andrew cheated on her and even rubbed it on her face in the worst, humiliating way possible. He didn't even respect her enough to hide it properly. He introduced the girl as his cousin, a younger woman. In her early 20s, someone prettier and also gullible enough to believe his tired lines. He even brought her into their home. Sandra, in all her arrogance, never questioned it. Sandra sometimes offered food to her thinking she was helping family, but lies have short legs. One evening, she found messages, long threads of romantic promises, photos, the kind of texts that leave no room for excuses. And the girl wasn't his cousin, not even close. She was his pregnant lover. Andrew had used Sandra as his free nanny, someone to cook, clean, and keep their home running, while he sneaked off to take care of the younger woman. In fact, Sandra unknowingly helped him pay for some of the lady's prenatal needs. She was even unknowingly cooking, cleaning just to take care of the woman carrying Andrew's child. He had lied to her, manipulated her, and used her kindness the exact same way he once used mine. When Sandra found out, she broke down so loudly the neighbors came to knock. Her world collapsed exactly the way mine had, except her fall was harder because she had stepped into that relationship thinking she was better than me, superior, special, chosen. But Andrew treated her exactly the same way he treated me. The relationship didn't even last up to 1 year before Andrew left her for his pregnant lover. And for the first time, maybe in her entire life, she understood what betrayal truly felt like. She finally tasted the same loneliness she had watched me drown in, except now there was no one to help her up. No one forgets betrayal. Not really. No one wants to be associated with it. People remember. People step back. No one stood by her. No one consoled her. For the first time, she felt the weight of being completely alone. But while her world was collapsing, mine was quiet, still, painful, yes, but strangely clear. Heartbreak is unavoidable in this case, especially for a man who you had sacrificed your 5 years of existence to. And that clarity that followed the pain came with one terrifying realization. If I didn't decide who I was going to be after all this, the pain was going to decide for me. So one night, I closed my door, sat alone in my living room, and told myself the truth. I was done with relationships, done with trusting anyone, done with trying to be chosen. All I just want to do is to pursue my career. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined, was that walking away from love wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something else. Something I wasn't prepared for. Something that would change everything again. After leaving everything behind, I knew I had to focus on myself. The first few weeks were the hardest. Every corner of my apartment reminded me of the life I had lost. Every quiet evening echoed with memories I didn't want to face. If I say that I wasn't heartbroken, then I would be lying to myself and to you all listening to my story. But I forced myself to move, to wake up, to start again, one small action at a time. I decided to take a break from work, not because I couldn't handle it, but because I needed space to think, to grieve, to breathe. I told myself it was temporary, just a few weeks to untangle my thoughts and regain some sense of balance. I filled the days with routines that gave me control. Long walks in the morning, journaling at night, cooking meals for myself, and rediscovering the small things I loved that had nothing to do with anyone else. I poured every ounce of my energy into healing. I went to the gym, ran farther than I had in years, and felt my body respond to the effort. I reread old books I loved, picked up new ones, and forced my mind to focus on ideas, stories, and possibilities outside of pain. And in that rebuilding, I began to allow myself glimpses of new possibilities. I met people who respected my boundaries, who offered kindness without expectation. I realized that love didn't have to arrive with a storm or betrayal. It could arrive quietly, gently, like the first morning light. I didn't need Andrew or Sandra to acknowledge my strength. I lived it every day. Their failures were theirs alone. I had learned that no one could take my dignity or my future without my consent, and I refused to hand it over again. After a month, I returned to work. I threw myself into projects, focused on deadlines, and let the challenges distract me from thoughts that still burned at the edges of my mind. My career became a quiet lifeline. The recognition I received for small victories, the respect of colleagues, and the simple satisfaction of doing something well reminded me that I was capable, that I didn't need anyone else to define my worth. By the end of the year, I had a life that felt solid under my feet. I reconnected with my friends and leaned on the ones who had always been steady in my life. Slowly, I started feeling like myself again. Not the version I had been before the wedding, but stronger, more deliberate, more in control. Most importantly, I had learned to trust myself again. I had endured humiliation, heartbreak, and betrayal, yet I had emerged with my integrity intact. I had chosen to rebuild instead of collapse, to transform pain into determination, and to place myself at the center of my own life instead of allowing others to dictate my worth. For the first time in months, I slept without nightmares, without imagining Andrew and Sandra together, and without reliving the betrayal. The silence of those nights no longer felt empty. It felt like space for my future. Even as life began to feel normal again, I had no interest in dating. I just wanted to focus on rediscovering myself and enjoying my singlehood after what Andrew and Sandra did. The very idea of trusting someone again felt impossible. Dating itself sounded like a foreign language. But life, as it always does, had other plans. I met Daniel. We met at a small gathering, a casual lunch my friend had organized. I didn't want to go, but I felt like I couldn't hide forever. He wasn't flashy. He didn't try to impress me with jokes, stories, or charm. He just existed calmly, quietly, with a presence that felt steady rather than forceful. That alone was different from anyone I had known. At first, I was guarded. Every word I said, every gesture I made, I analyzed. Could I trust him? Was he testing me? I wasn't naive, and I wasn't ready to open up. But he never pushed, never asked questions that I wasn't willing to answer. He listened. He paid attention. He noticed the little things, the way I held my coffee cup, the corners of my favorite notebooks, and the way I paused when I talked about difficult memories. Over weeks, we spoke more. Slowly, I realized I didn't feel tense around him. I could sit in silence without feeling the need to protect myself. He didn't try to fix me, didn't try to make me explain the past or justify my pain. He just let me be. And in that space, I began to breathe a little easier. The first time he came over to my apartment, he noticed the small messes I usually ignored, the dishes I hadn't gotten to, and he didn't judge. He helped tidy a little, made tea without saying a word about it, and just sat with me while I finished folding laundry. That simple presence, that normalcy felt revolutionary. For the first time, I realized that someone could be around without demanding more than I was ready to give. I remember a day a few months later, after I had spent hours at the office preparing a presentation. He stopped by with nothing but 2 coffees. No flowers, no gifts, no pressure. He just handed me the cup, smiled softly, happily, something open inside me. I laughed, small and shaky, a laugh I hadn't let escape in months. That moment made me realize that maybe I could let someone in again. We spent months like this, cautiously, gently. I didn't rush. I didn't dive in. I couldn't. But I watched him notice details about me, remember small things, and respond without making me feel exposed. That built a kind of trust that I hadn't felt in a long time, a trust that wasn't built on promises, declarations, or the idea of forever. It was built on now, on presence, on reliability. I let myself get closer slowly. A shared walk, a hand brushing mine, a laugh that lasted a little too long. I tested boundaries, watched for signs of pressure or manipulation, and found none. One evening, he noticed I was tense and asked quietly, "Do you want to just sit?" I nodded, and we spent hours talking about small things, nothing monumental. He didn't try to push intimacy. He didn't try to draw out feelings I wasn't ready to name. That patience made me willing to try, even just a little. The first kiss didn't feel like fireworks or a movie scene. It was quiet, careful, and mutual. It was acknowledgement, not surrender. But it mattered because I chose it. I was choosing to try again, to trust, to be open. And for the first time since Andrew's betrayal, I felt the possibility of something real. I didn't give him my heart all at once. I didn't hand over everything I had rebuilt, but I let him in slowly, piece by piece, in ways that felt safe. I learned to appreciate small gestures, the way he remembered my preferences, the way he noticed when I was tired, the way he never forced closeness. That careful respect taught me that love could exist without fear, that someone could care for me without taking advantage of my vulnerability. By the end of the year, I had a life that felt mine again. My career was thriving, my friends and family were close, and my heart was capable of connection without being naive. I wasn't the same person I had been before the betrayal. I had learned my own strength, my own boundaries. And with Daniel, I was discovering that love didn't have to be reckless to be meaningful. For the first time in a long time, I felt something like hope. Not the naive, unguarded hope I once had, but a cautious, measured hope that came from experience, from pain, from survival. And that was enough to take a step forward. I never expected to hear from Andrew again, not after the betrayal. And yet, life has a way of letting ghosts slip back into your quiet moments, testing how far you've really come. I was sitting on my bed, scrolling through messages from Daniel, rereading the one he had sent earlier with a picture of himself snow skating. He looked genuinely happy. Calm washed over me, steadying the storm inside. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe. I could live and be loved. Then my phone vibrated. A message from a name I thought I had buried forever appeared on the screen. Andrew. My heart didn't race. It didn't skip. It just tightened for a second like a reflex muscle memory before my rational mind took over. I opened the message. It was coded with forced politeness, the kind people use when they are trying to mask guilt. He said, "I'm glad to see you're doing well. I think about you sometimes, and I wish you the best." But I could read between the lines. Every word carried a weight of frustration, of disbelief, of someone who couldn't tolerate seeing the person they really hurt still standing, still happy, still alive. Most exes, I realized, don't just want to see you happy. They can't bear to see you move on without them. It gives them a heart attack. I didn't respond. I owed him nothing. Not a word. Not a glance. And then a few days later, he showed up at my new home. I didn't know how he found me, and I didn't care. He was there, standing in the doorway, like he belonged. But he didn't. Not anymore. He looked thin, his clothes loose, as if gravity itself had been working against him. His eyes were dull, lacking the sharp, alive quality I remembered. The careful way he tried to compose himself only made it worse. He looked smaller, diminished, and weighed down by his own guilt and bitterness. Just 3 minutes, he said. His voice was low, pleading, and almost fragile. "I need closure. I haven't stopped thinking about you." I turned toward him, calm and steady. No tremble in my hands, no catch in my throat. I nodded for him to speak. "I made a mistake," he said, stumbling over the words as if speaking them aloud could undo years of betrayal. "I lost the only person who really cared. I was a coward. I didn't know how to appreciate you. Please give me one more chance. I know I don't deserve it, but I can be better." Once, those words might have shattered me. Once, I would have thrown myself at him simply because he asked. But the woman he had known no longer existed. I listened, silent, watching his lips move, watching his eyes try to search mine for some hint of softness, some crack in the armor I had built over months of heartbreak and rebuilding. I felt nothing for him anymore. No anger, no longing, no hesitation. Only clarity. "You no longer have any power over me," I said firmly, my voice cold but steady. "We don't exist. Don't think you can come back and take what you yourself destroyed." No yelling, no accusations, just the truth, raw and unshakable. He tried to force a smile, the kind that used to melt me. It failed. Now it was small, hollow, and pitiful. A ghost of the man I once loved. Most exes, I realized, can't bear to see you heal without them. They think their presence alone can reclaim what they lost. But this time, he was too late. Before he could respond, the bell above door jingled. Daniel stepped inside. The warmth of his presence hit me like sunlight after weeks of darkness. He wrapped his arms around me first, then pressed a soft kiss to my temple. Just that simple gesture grounded me, reminded me who I was now, and who I deserved to be with. The storm in my chest finally began to settle. Andrew froze. He looked at us, frustration and disbelief etched on his face. His jaw tightened. His hands hung at his sides like he was holding back something he couldn't release. The sight of me calm, happy, and in someone else's arms burned him from the inside. He wanted to fracture this moment. He wanted to take back a piece of me that he knew he never should have lost. But he couldn't. I felt Daniel's hand tighten on my back. A subtle reassurance that I wasn't alone, that I hadn't been abandoned, and that I had built something stronger than the ruins Andrew left behind. I breathed in, letting the scent of him calm the raw edges inside me. Andrew mumbled something about how fast I had moved on. His words were meant to sting, to wound, but they slid off me like water over stone. I didn't respond. I wasn't the woman who would crumble at a whisper or a sigh. I wasn't a girl anymore who thought love could fix everything or that loyalty could protect me from betrayal. He left without a proper goodbye. Shoulders slumped, the weight of losing me finally settling in. And this time, I was the one who closed the door. Not in anger, not in regret, but in finality, in power. I sank into Daniel's embrace, letting the quiet swell between us. For the first time, I felt the life I had rebuilt affirm itself. I realized something vital. Not every door that swings open deserves to be walked through again. Some doors are meant to remain closed, burned shut by the choices of those who cannot be trusted. And in that silence, with Daniel holding me, I finally understood that I had survived. Not only survived, but I had learned. I was no longer the woman who could be shattered by the man who promised forever and gave betrayal instead. Andrew wanted me back, but I didn't want him, and I never would again. I am in love with a man who genuinely understands what true commitment is. I was not ready to trade that for frivolities. Daniel and I got married after a year of dating. Trust me, it was worth the wait. 10 years have gone by, and our love is still here, waxing stronger. It has not been all rosy, but we keep learning, growing, and choosing each other every day. If you're watching this right now, and you've been betrayed, abandoned, blindsided, or broken by someone you trusted with your heart, I want you to pause for a moment. Just breathe with me. Inhale, exhale. Let yourself feel that you're still here, that you survived even when it felt impossible. This story, it isn't just mine. It's the story of so many women who carry silence and shame, who feel too afraid or too embarrassed to speak the truth about the people they loved and trusted. And I want you to hear me clearly. You are not alone. You are not weak. You are not broken beyond repair. What you endured, the lies, the deceit, The sleepless nights filled with questions that had no answers is the toughest test of trust a heart can face. And yet, here you are, still standing, still searching for the pieces of yourself that others tried to take. That resilience, that is proof that you are stronger than you've been allowed to believe. Betrayal leaves marks, deep marks, ones that twist your memory of love, make you question your judgment, and make you doubt your own worth. I know what it's like to wake up on a night that should have been joy-filled, only to find your world ripped apart by those you trusted most. I know the sting of the person who promised you forever choosing someone else over you. I know the heartbreak of your closest friend, someone you confided in, stabbing you instead of protecting you. I know how it feels to soak your pillow with tears you can't explain, to lie awake wondering where love went wrong. That quiet heartbreak when the world sleeps and you're breaking alone. I know it. And I want you to know you're not weak for feeling this. You are not cheap for feeling hurt. That pain, it's not just heartbreak. It's disbelief. It's a loss. It's a fracture in your soul. And here's the truth you need to understand. Most exes, they don't just want to see you happy. They want to see you unsettled, struggling, and tethered to them still. Their inability to handle your strength is not your fault. It's theirs. You have a right to your anger, a right to your tears, a right to mourn the life you thought you'd have, the love you believed in, and the trust you gave freely. You are a human with emotions and blood running through your veins. So fill the pain fully without shame. And then, when you're ready, rise. Rise up like an eagle that you are. Rising doesn't erase your pain. It honors it. It proves your worth. For me, rising meant reclaiming my life, leaving behind the man who betrayed me with the person I trusted most, refusing to let him or anyone like him dictate my story. And yes, it meant allowing myself eventually to open my heart carefully to someone who truly valued it. Daniel didn't rush me. He didn't demand I forget the past. He offered safety, patience, and kindness. And in that, I found love that was steady, real, and profoundly healing. To every woman watching this, your pain is valid. Your anger is valid. Your tears are justified, but they are not the end of your story. Betrayal, especially from those we love and trust, it cracks your heart, shakes your identity, makes you question everything, but it cannot define you. You were loyal. You loved honestly. You showed up. And none of that is weakness. When you heal, when you move forward, some of those who broke, you will try to creep back in. Not because they deserve it, but because seeing you whole, seeing you happy, seeing you free, threatens them. You do not owe them access. You do not owe them forgiveness. You do not owe them another chance. You owe yourself peace. You owe yourself love that doesn't hurt your heart. You owe yourself the life you lost while trying to make the wrong people happy. Don't ever settle for less. If this story made you feel seen, if it reminded you you are not alone, if it gave you even a single moment of comfort, please subscribe. Not just to follow the channel, but to join a community of women who understand you. Women who are rising, recovering, refusing to break. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Speaking your truth aloud, it can be the first step in reclaiming your power. Your story might be exactly what another woman needs to hear tonight. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for surviving. And finally, I want you to hear me clearly, gently. I love you. I am rooting for your healing every single step of the way.